Story time about how I got bullied my last year of high school by the most popular girl. Okay, so this is my story time. A lot of you requested one, but I'm also at the airport, so sorry for any noise. So most of my high school years were spent in Nicaragua, except for my last year of high school. You see, I booked a show in Miami, so I had to move to the US. I was also doing modeling, commercials, and a lot of radio. I enrolled in the local high school, and it was like literally culture shock for me. I had never experienced an American high school, American parties, or even like actually mingled with American kids. I was really shocked to see how adult they were. For example, boys and girls were doing adult things. I was constantly being invited to parties where people were drinking, but I never actually went. So the most popular girl in school decided to befriend me in quotation marks. By the way, there were so many times where I spent lunch in the bathroom like Caddy from Mean Girls. It was like Mean Girls, but real life. So this popular girl, she was also a model, and we kind of bonded over that. But behind my back, she had a bet to see which boy would take me to prom. She wanted to see how far this boy could get with me, if you know what I mean. Part 2 might not be up, sorry. Part 2 of how I got bullied by the most popular girl in school. This is my story time. So this popular girl who befriended me had a bet with boys to see which one would take me to prom. Specifically because she wanted to see how far they would get with me on prom night, if you know what I mean. I kept saying no to every single boy. Because I was the new girl, I was constantly getting hit on, but a lot of these boys had girlfriends. Well, since I said no to every single boy, this mean girl decided to print out flyers of the show that I was in. So basically the poster of the show. And when I got to school the next day, there were so many posters of me on the walls, on the floor, with a lot of things drawn on my face. They were even in the boys' locker room. Then someone made up the rumor that I did that because supposedly I wanted everyone to know that I was a working actress. I was really embarrassed, but at the same time, I kind of thought it was funny, and this really upset the popular girl. So she decided to take it a step further. She invited me to her house one day, and because I thought she was my friend, I decided to go. She cooked me pasta and we talked for a while. Then 2 boys show up. She told me one of them would be my prom date. Part 3 of how I got bullied by the most popular girl in school. This is my story, by the way. So I'm at the popular girl's house, and suddenly 2 boys show up, and she says one of them was my date. That's when I told her that I did not want to date for prom. And then the boy asked to speak to me. I talked to him and I told him that I definitely did not want to go on a date with him and that I didn't even know him. That's when he told me that my friend had set everything up, and she told him that I liked him a lot. Well, I told him that that was not true, and I basically went home. A few days later, she started a rumor saying that I was totally in love with her and that I forced her to kiss me. Yeah, she's crazy. That's when people started calling me horrible, horrible names. But the joke's on her because I was so used to getting bullied in Nicaragua. After school one day, she comes up to me and starts telling me why she doesn't like me. She was so angry she started to cry. She said that she was the pretty girl and then she was the model in school. I literally just walked away from her. I went to prom with no date, which was so fun. I graduated and then I kept working. Guess who slid into my DMs a few weeks ago asking to hang out? That's right, the popular girl. I think she must have seen my TikTok or something. Should I actually go out with her and tell her what I think? Or should I just leave her on red? You guys decide. Story time about how my boyfriend broke up with me to marry my mother. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Yes, my boyfriend actually did marry my mom. A little backstory on him. He and I had been dating for 6 months. We decided we wanted to move in together, but neither of us had a job. So we ended up moving in with my mother. A little backstory on my mom. Her and I never got along when I was growing up. I mean, it would get to the point where we would throw hands. Every single week she had a new boyfriend. Most of the time her boyfriends would come live with us and she would pay for everything. She even asked me to get a job so that I could help support her and her boyfriend. I started working at a restaurant, and yeah, I helped her pay for bills. I would even buy her boyfriend his beer. When I got accepted into college, I decided I would move out. After that, I barely spoke to my mom. Fast forward to when my boyfriend and I move in with her. She would wear lingerie around the house and constantly flirt with my boyfriend. I had to tell her on several occasions to cover up and just leave him alone. But here's the thing, it never bothered my boyfriend. In fact, he would flirt back. I thought he was just joking. Until a few months passed and he breaks up with me. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my boyfriend broke up with me to marry my mother. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So like I said in part 1, we moved into my mom's house and she was wearing lingerie all the time. And she would constantly flirt with my boyfriend. My boyfriend was having a really hard time finding a job, but luckily I found a job. So I started working as a personal assistant. The problem is that as a personal assistant, you have to be on call almost 24/7. So I was usually never home, and sometimes when I would get home, I'd have to go right back out. This allowed for my mom and my boyfriend to spend a lot of time together by themselves. I would come home and they would be watching movies on the couch together. My mom would always cook him dinner. And then I started finding out stuff. For example, I found out they went to the movies together and they didn't invite me. I only found out because my boyfriend used our joint bank account to pay for the tickets. Sometimes they would order food for themselves and not even offer me any. And they would have beach days. They were spending way too much time together. At first I thought this was good because it meant they got along, but the more my mom dressed provocatively, the more I realized she was trying to seduce him. Then my boyfriend breaks up with me and tells me that I should move out because him and my mom fell in love. Story time about how I found my husband using Tinder and all the freaking dating apps. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Once again, I'm at the airport, sorry. My husband and I were both total sluts when we met. He was seeing like 10 girls when I first met him, and I was dating 3 guys at the time. Well, let me tell you, neither of us trusted each other, like not one bit. Eventually, he asked me to be his girlfriend, and I really wasn't sure if I wanted to say yes, but I did. He is so good looking. Like everywhere we go, we get told we're such a good looking couple. So we know we're both pretty good looking. To be fair, we were both addicted to Instagram. I would get tons of DMs from guys, and sometimes I would answer. And I know that he was getting DMs from girls, although he never told me. We dated for a year, and then he asked me to marry him. Of course, I said yes. I thought this was his way of telling me that he was going to commit to me 100%. After 6 months of being married, I started getting really suspicious. He would never leave his phone unattended, and if we were having dinner, he would always put his phone face down. I know you all know that's a red flag. Basically, he was hiding his phone from me like all the time. One night, we got super drunk, and I made sure to wait until he fell asleep. I got on his phone and found Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how I found out my husband was using Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge all at the same time. But yeah, and cheating on me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So I got him drunk enough that he fell asleep. I got onto his phone and I found all the dating apps. I quickly screenshot every conversation he'd had on each of the apps. I was literally on his phone for 4 hours. Like, I didn't sleep at all that night. And the whole time I was reading his messages, I was crying. Like, I literally thought he was dedicated to me. I sent myself all of the screenshots and then deleted them from his phone. I also went through his Instagram and found a bunch of DMs from different girls. And a lot of them were big influencers. I can spill so much tea about that, by the way. I found a bunch of naked pictures from girls as well, and he even had a freaking Snapchat. At that point, I couldn't look anymore. So here's what I did. I invited both of our families to our house for dinner. Ordered from a super fancy restaurant and made sure everyone was coming. When we sat down to dinner, I told him I was going to go get my laptop. He asked me why, and I told him to give me a second. He literally thought I was going to give him a big surprise. That's when I exposed him in front of both of our families. Part 3's up. Part 3 of how I found out my husband was using dating apps, cheating on me, and I exposed him in front of both of our families. So as everyone is sitting down and having dinner, I start a slideshow of all the DMs, pictures that had been sent between him and all these girls. Yes, I was petty enough to make a slideshow. My husband looks at me and tells me to take it down. Of course I didn't. That's when his mom got up from her chair and slapped him straight across the face. Of course my husband started crying instantly. His dad even grabbed him by the shoulders and shook him. My family was in shock. They were so disappointed in him. Mind you, him and my mom had a great relationship. He hung out with my family all the time. That's when I asked him for a divorce and I told him I wanted everything. By the way, my husband and I own a business and he's got his own money. So I ended up taking more than half of the business, 3 out of the 4 cars that he owns, and lots of money. But here's the thing, I still love him. Even though I have my own apartment and we live separately, he comes over all the time for, you know what? Like, we still love each other and still like each other, but I can't get past the fact that he actually cheated on me. He's asking for me to go back with him, but honestly, I don't know if I should. Once a cheater, always a cheater, right? But I'm gonna expose myself. I cheated on him too.
Story time about how I hooked up with my boyfriend's dad. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend's dad is an absolute DILF. He used to be a competitive bodybuilder and even did some modeling back in the day. Well, let's just say my boyfriend didn't turn out with the same looks. Don't get me wrong, my boyfriend is really sweet, but he's not the best looking guy. One of the reasons we started dating and I really liked him was because of how considerate and loving he was. We started off as friends and he would take me out to dinner, wine and dine me, eventually asked me to be his girlfriend and I said yes. We both come from wealthy families, and our families loved the idea of us being together. Exactly a year ago, we moved in together, and he got a new job that required him to travel a lot. Well, he asked his dad to come check on me. So his dad would come over, we would watch movies, and just hang out. But one night we decided to do some drinking. I got super tipsy, and so did he. One thing led to another, and we ended up, And after that, we did it over and over. Of course, my boyfriend's dad felt super guilty, and so did I. I mean, he was cheating on his wife with me, and I was cheating on his son with him. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how I hooked up with my boyfriend's dad. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. After my boyfriend's dad and I had hooked up a couple of times, of course, he felt really guilty, and so did I. We decided to end things cordially and never tell anyone about it. Fast forward to when my boyfriend comes home from his work trip. I had to pretend like nothing happened, but it was really hard because at this point I definitely caught feelings for my boyfriend's dad. I became really distant from my boyfriend and he started noticing. He also asked me one day if his dad came over to check up on me, which I said yes. After that, things were just not the same between my boyfriend and I. He would always ask me why I never touched him or kissed him, and I would just say that I felt bad or that I had my period. A month later, my boyfriend goes on another work trip. My boyfriend even invited me to come on the work trip, but I said no. Instead, as soon as he left, I called his dad and told him to come over. I told him I just wanted to talk, but really, His dad came over, we talked for about an hour, and then it happened again. It's like we just couldn't help ourselves. That's when he told me that he was catching feelings for me and that maybe even wanted to get a divorce. Part 3 is Part 3 of how I hooked up with my boyfriend's dad. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend's dad tells me that he wants to get a divorce from his wife because he's catching feelings for me. He even suggested that we could move away to another town. And yes, at this point, I had totally fallen for him too. But at the same time, I still had a relationship with his son. But to be honest with you guys, I didn't have the guts to tell my boyfriend that I loved his dad. Since my boyfriend was still on the work trip, his dad would come over almost every single day. His wife, aka my mother-in-law, didn't even notice that she was coming over to my place. She thought he was at work and at the gym. We are now fully in love. My boyfriend came back from his work trip, and of course, I was still distant. A few days later, he asked me what was wrong, and I just don't know what to tell him. His dad told me to keep quiet for now because he wants to figure out what to do. I don't want to end a marriage, and I know I don't want to break my boyfriend's heart. But at the same time, I am in love with his dad. I know you guys are going to think I'm a terrible person, but I genuinely need your advice. What do you guys think I should do? Should I be honest with my boyfriend?